Ever get that feeling, when you're looking at something super complicated, like a massive instruction manual, maybe, and you just wish someone would, point out the really important parts and explain how it all fits together?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like when you're trying to figure out some convoluted process at work, or even, just putting together one of those, what do they call them? Those flat pack furniture things.
Exactly. Well, that's kind of what we're doing today on the deep dive. We're taking on something that can feel just as intricate, GMP QMS.
GMP QMS.
Good manufacturing practice quality management systems. So think of this deep dive as, well, us providing that essential roadmap, that guide to what really matters.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. We've been digging into a whole bunch of material for this one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, from the foundational stuff, Code of Federal Regulations, we've got parts 110, 111, 211, general provisions, dietary supplements, finished pharmaceuticals. It's a lot, but then to get a more practical perspective, we also looked at some really insightful YouTube videos. Experts from like EAS Consulting Group, NZP Safety Hub, they had some great stuff. And then we even got into some pretty detailed texts on pharmaceutical quality and risk management.
So like the whole spectrum.
Exactly. We wanted to cover all the bases, from the regulatory foundation to the real-world application. And the goal really is to extract the absolute core elements of a GMP QMS and then show how those pieces actually work together, like as a cohesive system.
So it's not like we're just going to be reading regulations verbatim.
No, definitely not.
Okay, good, because I think our listeners are probably pretty familiar with the basics.
Yeah, they're a savvy bunch.
Right. So what we really want to do is give them that practical understanding. Like, how are these systems actually established and maintained out there in the real world? And why are they so crucial for making sure the products we use are safe and effective?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point, right?
Okay, so GMP QMS, it sounds like a big topic. Where do we even start?
Well, you're right. It is comprehensive. But one thing that stood out to me going through all these sources,
Yeah.
the most effective GMP QMS, it's not just a bunch of documents. It's really rooted in a commitment to quality. And that starts at the top.
With leadership.
Exactly. Several sources really emphasize this idea. A true culture of quality is driven by leadership. It's more than just saying, quality is important. It's about demonstrating that commitment in everything you do.
Like walking the walk.
Exactly. In fact, one of the video transcripts we looked at, I think it was from NZP Safety Hub, they talked about how senior management plays a key role.
In what way?
Well, there are these broad regulatory guidelines. Senior management has to interpret those guidelines and then develop specific policies that are tailored to their own operations.
Oh, I see.
So it's about taking those general principles and translating them into something actionable.
That makes sense. So it's not just a dusty manual on a shelf somewhere.
No, not at all.
It's about the people in charge actually fostering that mindset, that quality is.
Front and center.
Yeah, front and center all the time. Okay, that makes sense. So once you've got that leadership foundation in place, what's next? What's the next step in building this QMS?
Well, the next critical piece is quality planning. It's not something that just, magically appears.
Right.
It takes careful thought, careful design. It involves defining your quality objectives very clearly.
What does that mean? Defining your quality objectives.
Well, you have to ask yourself, what specific standards of quality are we aiming for in our products?
Okay.
Right. And then once you've defined those objectives, you have to figure out how to achieve them.
The processes and procedures.
Exactly. And that's where things like, well, let's take plant sanitation as an example. 21 CFR Part 110. It specifies that the overall cleanliness of the manufacturing facility, it's got to be the responsibility of competent individuals.
So you can't just assume it'll happen on its own?
No way. You need to plan for it, assign roles and responsibilities, establish procedures to make sure it's done right.
So it's a deliberate process. You set your quality targets,
Right.
and then you figure out who's responsible for hitting them and how they're going to do it.
Exactly. It's like drawing up the blueprint for quality.
A blueprint for quality. I like that. Okay, so a key part of this planning stage seems to be, well, putting things down in writing. Am I right?
You are absolutely right. Documentation.
There we go.
I know, right? But honestly, it's super important. Documentation and well-defined written procedures, they're the foundation of a strong GMP QMS. There's this principle, kind of a mantra in the pharmaceutical world.
What's that?
If it wasn't documented, it wasn't done.
I've heard that one before.
Yeah, it's a big one, and it was really emphasized in that NZP Safety Hub video we watched. And it makes sense. It's not just about creating paperwork for the sake of it. It's about having a clear, traceable record of every critical activity.
So if something goes wrong.
Exactly. If there's a problem, you need to be able to go back and see exactly what happened.
Like a trail of breadcrumbs.
Yeah, exactly. Without documentation, you're basically operating in the dark.
Makes sense. So what kind of things are we talking about needing to document?
Basically, any operation that could impact product quality needs to be clearly documented. This includes standard operating procedures, or SOPs for short.
SOPs. Okay.
They provide those step-by-step instructions for how to perform specific tasks.
Right, like a recipe.
Yeah, kind of. We saw examples in the materials we reviewed, like how to properly clean and sanitize equipment. That's in 21 CFR Part 111, and also in some of the EAS consulting group stuff.
Hmm.
But it's broader than just cleaning. It covers things like production and process controls, as outlined in 21 CFR 211.100. Then there's the correct procedures for laboratory testing, the EAS consulting group video on good laboratory practice, or GLP SOPs, talked about that in detail, and even how to maintain equipment that came up in our Season 5 GLP transcripts.
So SOPs cover a lot of ground. It's like the instruction manual for, well, everything important.
Pretty much. And, the sources we looked at, they had some really concrete examples of what these SOPs cover.
Like what?
Well, cleaning, of course, testing methods, even how companies should evaluate their suppliers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the NZP Safety Hub video, they explain that a GMP guideline might just say, in general terms, you need a system for supplier qualification, but then a company would develop a detailed SOP.
Outlining how they actually do that.
Exactly, like what specific criteria do they use to assess suppliers, what documentation do they require, how do they conduct audits, who's responsible for making the final decision to approve a supplier. All of that gets spelled out in the SOP.
Wow, that's pretty comprehensive.
And, it's not enough to just create these documents and then just forget about them.
Right, they need to be updated.
Exactly. They need to be living documents, regularly reviewed and updated. Regulations like 21 CFR Part 11, they emphasize this need for strong revision and change control procedures.
To make sure everything's up to date.
Yeah, and also to maintain an audit trail so you can track how the documentation has changed over time and who made those changes. Especially important for electronic records, of course.
Makes sense. So that everyone's always working from the most current information.
Exactly.
That sounds like a lot of work, though, keeping all that documentation current.
It is. It's a continuous effort, but it's absolutely essential. It's how you maintain control over your processes and ensure consistency in the quality of your products.
It's all about control and consistency. Got it. Now, we've talked about the procedures, but what about the people actually carrying them out?
Oh, that's another fundamental piece of the puzzle. Personnel training and qualifications. You have to make sure the people doing the work are properly trained and qualified.
That makes sense. You could have the best procedures in the world, but
If the people don't know how to follow them.
it's all for nothing.
Exactly. 21 CFR 211.425, it states very clearly that everyone involved in the manufacturing process needs to have the appropriate education, training, and experience to perform their assigned duties.
So it's not just about showing up.
No, not at all.
You need to be qualified.
You need to be competent. And this training, it's not just a one-time thing either. It needs to be ongoing. And it has to be conducted by qualified individuals themselves.
So you got qualified people following clearly documented procedures. It's all starting to come together.
It is, isn't it?
But how does this QMS actually get put into practice? Like in the day-to-day work of making products?
Well, that's where we get into production and process controls.
Okay.
The QMS provides the framework, right? The overarching framework that dictates how manufacturing operations are carried out.
To ensure quality.
Exactly. To minimize the risk of contamination and to make sure you're producing a quality product every time.
Every single time.
Every single time. This involves carefully monitoring critical parameters throughout the entire manufacturing process. Things like time, temperature, humidity, pH levels.
It's all got to be just right.
Right, and of course all of this is laid out in detailed written procedures. 21 CFR 110.80a touches on this. And any deviation from these procedures, it's got to be documented, investigated, and justified.
So if something goes off script,
You can't ignore it.
you have to record it and explain why it happened.
Exactly. It ensures that any unexpected events are addressed and their potential impact to quality is assessed.
It's like a safety net.
It is. And, the QMS, it doesn't just focus on the manufacturing process itself.
Well,
It also covers all the materials that go into the final product.
like the ingredients.
The ingredients, yeah, but also components, drug product containers, closures. There are strict controls for all of that. Like they all have to be tested and approved before they can be used in production. That's spelled out in regulations like 21 CFR 211.84a and 212.71c.
So every single thing that goes into the product.
Has to meet the quality standards.
Wow. Every ingredient, every piece of packaging, it all has to be checked.
It does, and it goes even further than that. The QMS also focuses on the equipment and facilities.
The machines that make the products.
Right, and the buildings where all of this takes place.
Okay, so how does the QMS ensure that the equipment and facilities are up to snuff?
Well, first of all equipment has to be designed, constructed, and qualified to perform its intended function.
Reliably.
Reliably, yes. And there's a whole qualification process for this.
What kind of process?
It's called DQ, IQ, OQ, PQ.
DQ, IQ.
It stands for Design Qualification, Installation Qualification, Operational Qualification, and Performance Qualification.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is, but it's important. It ensures that the equipment is designed correctly, installed correctly, and that it actually works the way it's supposed to under all sorts of different conditions.
That's thorough.
The EAS Consulting Group video went into some detail on this, and then on top of that, all equipment has to be calibrated regularly.
To make sure it's accurate.
Exactly, and maintained to prevent breakdowns and contamination. We talked about that a bit in our Season 5 GLP transcripts.
So it's not just about the equipment itself. It's also about how it's used and maintained.
Right, it's a life cycle approach.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about the buildings themselves?
Well, the QMS has a whole bunch of requirements for maintaining sanitary conditions in the facilities.
To prevent contamination.
Exactly. We're talking ventilation, pest control, general maintenance.
Really, the whole 9 yards?
Yeah, pretty much. 21 CFR 110.20 or well 7 and 110.35A cover some of this. There are even regulations about how to clean non-food contact surfaces and how to handle and store single-service articles.
Wow. So everything's got to be spotless.
Well, the goal is to create an environment that minimizes any risk of contamination.
I see. It's all about creating the right environment for producing quality products.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about all these different systems and procedures, but how do you know if they're actually working?
That's where audits come in. Audits are a key part of the monitoring the effectiveness of the QMS.
So you're basically checking up on yourself.
In a way, yeah. There are internal audits where the company conducts its own inspections to identify areas for improvement.
Self-evaluation.
Right. But then there are also external audits
Conducted by who?
by regulatory bodies like the FDA.
Oh, right.
And also by customers.
Customers.
Yeah, customers often want to audit their suppliers to make sure they're meeting the required quality standards. The NZP Safety Hub video talked about that.
So you've got this system of checks and balances. You're checking yourself, and then external parties are checking you as well.
Right, and the focus of these audits, it's all about evaluating how effective the quality system is. That understanding FDA inspections and data video transcript, it really emphasized that.
And the Bleiser text, if I remember correctly, it talks specifically about GMP laboratory audits, right?
You got it. It's all about making sure those lab tests are reliable and accurate.
Okay, so audits are all about ensuring the QMS is doing its job.
And identifying any weaknesses that need to be addressed.
Right. Now, another thing that seems to run through all of this is the idea of risk management.
Absolutely. Quality risk management is a crucial part of a modern GMP QMS.
What does that involve?
Well, the Rodriguez-Perez text we looked at, the one on quality risk management, it emphasized this proactive approach to risk assessment.
Proactive.
Yeah, you don't wait for problems to happen. You try to anticipate them.
I see.
And this risk assessment, it's applied throughout the entire life cycle of a product, from the initial design and development all the way through to manufacturing and distribution.
So you're always thinking ahead.
Exactly. Identifying potential quality issues, evaluating how likely they are to occur and how severe they would be if they did occur, and then figuring out how to mitigate or eliminate those risks.
So it's not just about reacting to problems, it's about preventing them in the first place.
Precisely.
Now, the QMS also has a way of stepping back and looking at the big picture, right?
You're talking about management review.
Yeah, that's the one.
Right. Regular management reviews, those are essential. It's where senior management takes a look at the overall health and effectiveness of the QMS.
Like an annual checkup?
Yeah, kind of. They look at key performance indicators, the findings from audits, any deviations that have occurred, how effective the corrective and preventive actions have been.
It's about making sure the QMS is still fit for purpose.
Exactly.
And then, of course, there's the whole idea of continuous improvement.
Ah, yes, the never-ending quest for better quality.
That's the one.
That's often implemented through a process called CAPA, Corrective and Preventive Action.
CAPA.
Right. The Rodriguez-Perez text on CAPA, it explains this really well. CAPA is a systematic way of dealing with deviations, non-conformances, and audit findings.
So if something goes wrong,
Or if you just identify an opportunity for improvement.
you don't just fix it and move on.
No. You dig deeper, you figure out why it happened, put in place measures to prevent it from happening again, and then you look for other areas where similar problems could occur.
So you're learning from your mistakes.
And you're constantly trying to get better.
I like it. So it seems like all these different pieces we've talked about, the leadership commitment, the planning, the documentation, the training, the controls, the audits, the risk management, the management review, the CAPA, it's all connected, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. It all works together as one integrated system.
Like a well-oiled machine.
Well, hopefully well-oiled. But yeah, the goal is to build a QMS where quality is baked in from the very beginning. It's not something you just test for at the end. It's part of every stage of the product lifecycle.
And how do you measure how well all of this is working?
With performance metrics, you need to be able to track key data to see how effective your QMS really is and to pinpoint areas that need attention.
What kind of metrics are we talking about?
Well, our sources didn't give a specific list, but we can get an idea from the things we've discussed. Things like the number of deviations that occur during manufacturing, findings from audits, customer complaints, training completion rates, equipment downtime.
So you're using data to get a clear picture of what's going on,
Exactly, and that data helps you identify areas where you need to improve.
which brings us right back to that culture of quality, doesn't it?
It does. By setting measurable objectives and then holding everyone accountable for achieving those objectives, you're reinforcing that commitment to quality.
And that all starts with leadership.
Exactly. Leadership sets the tone.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. We've really gone deep into the core components of a GMP QMS.
And how it all fits together.
It's a lot more than just following rules and regulations.
It's a whole way of thinking about quality.
It is, and it's a continuous process. You're never really done.
You're always striving to improve.
Exactly.
So for you, our listener, I hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of how important GMP QMS is.
And how complex it can be.
You can see now the level of detail and rigor that goes into ensuring the safety and quality of the products we all use every day.
It's something we often take for granted.
But it's really quite remarkable when you think about it.
It is, and as you think about all these interconnected elements of a QMS, here's something to ponder.
A final thought.
Yeah. In your opinion, what single aspect of a GMP QMS do you think is the most critical for ensuring consistent, high-quality products?
That's a good question.
Is it the leadership commitment, the meticulous documentation, the thoroughness of the audits, or maybe that constant push for continuous improvement? What do you think is the most important piece of the puzzle?
Something to think about.
It is. Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.